Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Tom Stewart here. I am with Derek Christian, and this is Smart Business Moves.
Howdy.
Wow, Derek, it's been a while since we've done this, isn't it?
Yeah, been a little busy.
Yeah, it's better than being bored. Liz is um, spending some time with her daughter and grandchild and doing doing fun stuff today. So Derek and I are going to hold down the fort, and we're going to be talking about mergers, acquisitions, and different ways you can sell your business.
Yep.
Because I guess there's a lot of things that we can't say with certainty, but I think that we're safe in saying that none of us are going to be running our business forever, and it's never too early to start planning for that. Before we get started, I'll just share. We've got a May Central Live event that we're doing in the beginning of the year. And here we go.
Yeah, I think the goal is I'm going to be going to that one.
I think Laura
Yep.
signed up a few people. Are you
I
part
was
of
supposed to be one of them. Yep.
that entourage? Okay. These typically sell out. We did one in September and we had a full house. So I'm posting the link here. If you use Made Central, it's a valuable experience. You'll learn in a much deeper level, how to leverage the tool to its fullest degree. And if you don't use Made Central, but are kind of curious about what Made Central does, we have a lot of people sign up that don't use Made Central, but they take a lot away from it to their business. And full disclosure, most of them wind up deciding that they should be using Made Central by the end of the event, but buyer beware in that regard. But it's a pretty cool event. And it's 8, 9, 10 January. Start off the year right. I dropped the link in chat. Hope to see some of y'all there. So, Derek, what's
Yeah.
been going on in your world?
A lot. But one of the things that when you asked me beyond today, I said I want to talk about was people selling their companies. It's something I've been doing a lot of here in the past. It wasn't on purpose. Over the years, I think I sat down and wrote them all down at one point. I have bought or sold about 20 cleaning companies, some with you, some with Blue Sky, some on my own. And through that, I got kind of a reputation that if you're looking to sell or even buy a company, to reach out to me. So it's become a pretty big area for me of people reaching out and asking for help cleaning their company and selling their cleaning company. I just do cleaning companies, and it's been interesting to see. So it's a question people ask about all the time. How do you value them? Who do you sell them to? How long does it take? What does the process look like? And there's some stuff going on because on top of everything else, we're starting to see some VC firms starting to play in the house cleaning space, where they're starting to buy up home cleaning companies and put them in a portfolio and decide that they're willing to maybe pay more than people traditionally have been. So yeah, there's just a lot going on. In the last 2 years, I haven't not been able to sell a cleaning company, and they've all sold in under 6 months. So it's been a good time to sell.
So, when you say VC, you're talking about venture capital. Who are these people?
Yeah, it's venture capital, but at a different scale. I mean, we're not talking about the guys who would invest $1 billion in Microsoft. They've been active for a while. If you've been paying attention, they've been buying up a lot of HVAC companies, a lot of plumbing companies. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of money looking to park it someplace and make a nice, predictable return. And normally they're pretty happy at making 10 or 15% a year. So these venture capital firms are buying up home service companies because we can make a nice, predictable rate of return for the owner. So they're rolling them up. Now, it gets kind of interesting, and this isn't what most of us are going to sell into, but bigger companies typically get better multiples. So if you are out there trying to sell your home cleaning company right now to somebody, normally you're going to be able to get about 3 times the cash that it represents. But if you were to sell it on Wall Street, you could get 20 times the cash. So what a lot of these companies are trying to do is build a company big enough that they can eventually sell it to somebody else. So buy it at 3 or 4 or 5 times cash flow, get it bigger and sell it for 10 to 15 times cash flow, and make money the entire time they own it. So that's kind of the game plan that they've got in mind.
So, the old days of, if you wanted to sell your business, putting it out on Biz Buy Sell or finding a broker and expecting to get 3 times the multiple, but
Yep.
grinding it out for a couple of years, finding that buyer, that's not the way that it's typically working now.
Yeah, well, you've got kind of some different segments in the market. If you're under $1 million in revenue, you're going to sell to an individual, probably leaving corporate America. You're probably going to get 2.5 to 3 times cash flow. So under $1 million, we're still talking about that. But what's kind of changed about our industry, 5 and 6 years ago, when we got together at the trade shows, if you did $1 million in revenue, you were in a pretty exclusive crowd. And now, I won't say it's everyone, but it's getting to be a pretty good chunk of people that are doing over $1 million. And if you think about it, if you're making a 20% margin and on $1 million in revenue, that's 200,000 in cash. So that's decent money. So there are people out there with $100-200 million to invest. Once again, we're not talking Microsoft money, but if I can buy your company and put 10 or 15 of them together, they'll make 15, 16 times. So anyways, if you're less than $1 million, you're still selling to a retail buyer like always. If you're $1 million to about $5 million in revenue, there's some buyers out there that'll pay either 3 times cash flow without asking very many questions, or up to 5 times cash flow. I'm seeing some of those $2 and $3 million companies selling for 5 times cash flow. Kind of the magic numbers. Once you generate $1 million in profit a year, you open up a whole new group of buyers who'd be willing to pay you up to 10 times. So it's getting really interesting because
Now, when you talk about $1 million in profit, you're talking a business that's probably would have to be north of 5 million in revenue.
$5-6 million. If you got a $5 or $6 million company that's making $1 million in profit, once again, to the Wall Street types, a 10% return on investment on a really stable business is actually pretty good. So especially if you've been growing, they will give you that type of money. We actually saw a company called Made Sailors in New York City sell for $10 million a couple of years ago. And at the time, nobody had ever seen a sale that big. And now we're starting to see VC firms saying, hey, if you hit $1 million in profit, we'll give you $10 million. Because it sounds, for those of us in the past, like a crazy number, but it's really not. Because if I pay $10 million and make $1 million a year, that's a 10% rate of return. So they're going to make 10% holding it. And like I said, realize their goal is to buy 10 or 20 companies like that. And then once they've got 10 or 20 companies of that size, now they're making 20 million in profit. And now they can look at going public or selling to a bigger firm and maybe getting a 15 or 20% multiple. So they're playing a game of buy it at one multiple, sell it at a higher multiple. And if they make 10% while they own it in the meantime, fantastic. And like I said, you've seen this in the HVAC space. If you know any guys over in HVAC or plumbing, a lot of those guys are retiring because VC firms are showing up and saying, hey, I'll give you 10 years worth of profit. And they're like, really? Okay, done. Here you go. So, you might think of it as Apollo Heat and Air or Joe's Heat and Air. But if you Google it, you'll see they got bought by some company you've never heard of in the background.
So there's this whole concept of scaling a business as opposed to just growing a business. And I think that kind of ties into, the top line revenue as well as the profit. And the bigger companies get bigger multiples because they're safer investments. And I guess the assumption is that you've got a scalable product there, a scalable business that's not dependent upon the hard work and charisma of the owner.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, if you're generating $1 million in profit, you're not in the day-to-day. You've been doing it for long enough that it's pretty predictable. I don't know about you, but for most people, the last couple of years in the cleaning industry has been pretty good. So your numbers are probably getting better every single year. So they're looking at, they'll make at least 10%. They're hoping they can do it better, maybe get some economies of scale in the back office and the software and the supplies. And then, like I said, they don't even really need to boost the profit that much. They're really going to make their money for selling it for a better multiple. The fact that they get paid 10% to hold it is just like a bonus payment to them. So yeah, it's been really, really, like I said, just fascinating. And we've got some friends in the industry that we've seen who've caught on to this, that are out there buying smaller companies to make themselves get bigger so that they can then be a bigger, more attractive to these big guys. So, I've seen some people with $2 and $3 million companies basically trying to bulk up so that they can then become attractive to these companies. So it's definitely going to be an interesting couple of years.
Have we started to see any mergers yet? because I know in some other verticals, like that's a strategy that, two or three HVAC companies might merge. Any one of them on their own might be worth a multiple of three, but when they combine, they might have a multiple of six or more, and they basically double the value of their businesses by putting them together.
Not yet. I mean, I'm definitely hearing people talk about it. I know I've got some friends that have $2 and $3 million companies have gotten together and said, why don't we just merge together? And then maybe we'll have a $7 million company and we'll sell it for better multiple. Honestly, a lot of us have had such good growth rates that some people are just trying to make the run to 5 million alone. But I think you'll see some mergers. I think you're going to see some more activity happening. I mean, the really good news, like I said, if you've got at $1 million, you're probably still at $1 million in revenue, not profit. At $1 million in revenue, you're probably not going to get 5 or 10 times multiples. Those are the really big guys. But the good news is, if you're that size, if you were to call me, I could get you sold to a VC firm 3.5 times cash flow and close the deal within 2 months. So, if you're of retirement age, it's super easy to leave right now. Where it used to be, you'd sell it, maybe you wouldn't, they'd negotiate. Some people would want you to provide owner financing. So if you're in that $1 million to $2 million in revenue phase, it'll be quick and easy, and you'll get 3 to 3.5 times cash flow. If you're in that 2 million and up range, that's where you can probably get 4.5. And then, like I said, some of those people are trying to make the run to get to 5 million in cash flow, because I know 3 VC firms in our space that if you had $1 million in cash flow would give you 10x. I know it's a conversation my wife and I have been having. We've been pretty happy with the size of our company for an awful long time. But we're sitting around going, gosh, if we grew by 50% more, we could sell this thing for a pretty nice amount of money. So maybe now is the time to talk about opening that branch down in Boulder instead of just staying in Fort Collins. It wasn't worth it just for the little bit of extra revenue, but if it can push us into that big company category, suddenly I'm interested. So yeah, definitely. And I think you're going to keep seeing it, because these guys are just starting to play. They've been doing this in the HVAC space for going on 10 years, and they're still buying companies. The biggest company I know of operating in our space is only about 4 or 5 companies. They want more. They're hungry. They just can't find them.
You've seen this in like the waste management space. You've seen this in commercial cleaning. You're seeing it in other home services like HVAC, plumbing, pest control. It's happening.
Yeah, what's really interesting is in a lot of the other industries you talked about, like the commercial cleaning, the companies went public, like ABM. You saw it with Garbage, Republic and U.S. Waste Company. What's been really interesting is most of the companies I know doing this are not actually that urgent to go public. They just see it as a great return on investment. It's just like, how the big venture capital firms bought up a bunch of real estate in 2008. It's because they figured out it was a nice, predictable rate of return. Being a landlord used to be a mom and pop industry. You'd make a really nice rate of return, but some Wall Street types did some math and said, man, if we bought 1,000 houses, how much money could we make? And so now they're starting to say, okay, well, we've run up the price of real estate too much. We bought HVAC companies. Well, these house cleaning companies are starting to make a really nice profit. Maybe we should start buying some of them. So yeah, it's mostly people that are looking to park somewhere and make 10 to 15% low risk. That's their whole strategy.
So are we trying to get people to think a little bit differently about their businesses? I mean, roll the clock back 10 years ago, for most of us, our cleaning business was a source of income. This is how we paid our bills, kept a roof over our head. And someday we're going to get to the point where we're not going to want to run that business anymore, and we're going to sell it to somebody else so it can be their source of income. And, today it's looking like something different. Like it could be an investment that, we could leverage in a lot of different ways. It's more than a source of income in 2020.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, there's kind of 3 tiers. If you're at that $1 million in revenue, you can still be in the day-to-day and we can sell you. Some VC firm may buy you, come in and replace you. But if you really want the really nice premiums, 5 to 10, you've got to be out at the day-to-day. They would kind of like it. I've even had them use the phrase, do you have a desk at the office? They would rather that you not even have a desk. that you pop in, you check on things and go back home. That's kind of their ideal business that they're looking to acquire. And it might change your mind. I was helping somebody sell their company recently, and they and their spouse had run the company together for years and had a fantastic profit margin because of that. But because they had almost no office staff, I can't sell them to one of these firms. So while it maximized the cash flow, now I can't sell it for a bunch of money. So my advice to them was, hey, you need to get some office staff. You need to prove this place can run without you, because it was a big company. It was like 2.5 million in revenue. I was like, if you can prove this thing will run without you, and not a bunch of VAs, like real office staff that know how to run it without you in the day to day, I can sell it for more. So that's one of the projects they're working on right now, is trying to get out of the day to day and prove that they don't need to be there.
So out of all of us who are owning and running house cleaning businesses, what's your advice? I mean, do we need to be, I don't think that you're telling people we should all be selling our businesses, but should we be thinking differently than we have? And what are the things that we should?
Well, yeah, in general, I think we just all need to think bigger. I sold my original company back, oh gosh, I forgot when I sold it now. It's been, I think
16, 17.
Yeah, it's been 6 or 7 years. And at the time, I thought I'd leveled out for 3 years. I thought my company was about as big as it could get. It was bigger than almost anyone I knew. I only knew 2 or 3 companies that had 2 or 3 people that had bigger companies. And in the intervening years, everyone's gotten to be $2, $3, $4 million. And I wonder, gosh, what if I hadn't sold all those years ago? I got a pretty good buyout offer. I'm pretty happy with the multiple I got, but I would have never imagined companies could have gotten this big. So I think we just all need to think about how much bigger we can get. Google has largely forced a winner take all mentality. We got a little bit of a funny situation in Fort Collins because my wife owns the #1 cleaning company on Google. And for a while, my company was ranking #3 in the 3-pack. And we were actually really excited because we figured once my company went into the 3-pack, I would get a bunch more leads. And once I started ranking in the 3-pack on Google, I got more leads, but her company continued to get about 15 times more leads than I did. So behavior's changing. People aren't calling the top 3 companies. They're calling the top company. And it's really making those top companies get bigger and bigger and bigger. And like I said, it was really fascinating because my whole strategy was once I'm #3, I'll start getting more leads. But once I was #3, I got more leads, but not as much as I expected. Like I said, when we pulled the report, she got 15 times as many leads from Google as I did, but we're both in the 3-pack. That many people just stopped at #1. They'd call the first one and book.
So does that mean she's a better digital marketer than you are?
A better digital marketer had been around for longer. Once it's great to be #1 because once you've got 500 reviews, you get the most calls. And as long as you don't mess them up, you're going to get more chances for reviews and just get to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I do think it makes you want to change your strategy. If you're in a market, getting into the 3-pack is not going to be the be all end all. You need to be #1. So maybe find a niche you can win. Maybe don't try to win Cincinnati. Maybe try to win Blue Ash or a suburb. Try to figure out what some strategies are to win. But it really has pushed a winner take all. And I think Google drove a lot of that. I think Google making it on the front page that said, here's the #1, #2, #3 company really made the bigger companies get bigger.
So if you're in a market, you want to be #1, is that something that is in consideration in terms of evaluation of a business? Obviously cash flow is how the bills are being paid, but there's a lot of intangibles I would think that would go into the calculation as well.
Yeah, cash flow and stuff matters. Obviously, your reputation online, how many Google reviews you have, your office staff, how well things are documented, your customer loss rate. These guys are actually pretty smart. So when I've seen them doing acquisitions, they don't just look at your cash flow, they want to see your customer retention. So they want to see not only are you able to grow the top line, but you're able to keep them. They don't want to see that you had a burst, maybe you got some press, maybe you spent some money on marketing. They want to see once you get them, you keep them for a period of time. So what is your loss rate? Is it 4% or less on a monthly basis? What's your online reputation? Where do you get your leads from? It is a lot more attractive to buy a company that naturally ranks #1 and they don't have to pay the leads for than somebody who's the same size company, but all of their business comes from AdWords and Google local services. Because AdWords and Google local services, I can get outbid. So yeah, these are all things that go into account.
Okay. So what do I need to be thinking about? What are we telling our audience here? I'm thinking bigger, but what do I do? What do I start doing tomorrow? And I'm not, if I'm not thinking about, I haven't thought about selling my business. I have no interest in
Yeah.
selling my business. Do I need to still be doing some things differently?
Yeah. So like I said, there's a couple tiers. Not everyone's $1 million in revenue. So if you're under $1 million in revenue, I think you want to hit that $1 million in revenue point, even if you have to be involved in the business, because it makes you really easy to sell. Once again, you're not going to get the crazy multiples we're talking about, but I can still get, if I were to sell you tomorrow, I could probably get you 3.5 times cash. Less than $1 million, it's still a little tricky to sell these things, just because you're trying to sell to someone leaving corporate America. It's a different ball of wax. Above $1 million, I think you really want to start to look at it more as an investor and think about what they're going to think about. What's your rate of return? What are you doing to maximize your profit? What are you doing to make your cleaners as efficient as you can? The most successful companies, and this is just something I've experienced in the past, have very tight geographies. There's been a real tendency to think to get bigger, I need to have a bigger geography. But the people who are really winning are winning in specific areas. Once again, if we talk about ranking in Google, if I try to rank in Phoenix, I'm going to have a really hard time. But if I start trying to rank in specific neighborhoods, I'll rank much easier and I'll get a lot of volume out of there. I mean, you can hit 3 million in revenue with 600 customers, maybe even a little bit less. So they're just getting really specific in winning neighborhood by neighborhood, area by area, because it's more efficient. Once again, if I have to cover, all right, I'm backing up. A few years ago, when like Launch 27 was happening, a bunch of people were opening branches all over the country. And their pitch was, look, I've got a $5 million business, but each branch was $500,000 in revenue. That's not nearly as attractive as I've got a $3 million business that generates all of my revenue within 10 miles. That second business is super efficient. It's got super targeted marketing. It's probably getting a lot of organic and referral traffic that we're not having to spend a bunch of money on advertising on. So getting super efficient and super focused is how you win the game. It's how you rank on Google. It's how you make more money. It's how you'll be more attractive to these guys. So don't take my message to go out there and do what a bunch of those guys did and open virtual branches. Because now I'm not selling a $5 million company. I'm selling 10 $500,000 companies. You'd much rather sell one company with a tight geography, maybe add a couple branches, but once again, each individual office should be nice and tight and well-focused. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense that you want to, the term operational excellence comes to mind. You want to build the term scalability. You can generate more revenue by putting a hot dog stand outside your office, but that doesn't really add value the same way as lower your monthly customer churn rate or lower your payroll percent to revenue, where you're able to generate more profit off of the revenue that you're generating. Employee turnover, quality scores, all the metrics that at the end of the day, I get a buyer, I would presume, I mean, Derek, we've bought a few businesses together ourselves that the big thing, you can look at cash flow and say, okay, this is where it is. And we know that, but where is it going to be a year after we buy it? And we do it with the expectation that we can drive the cash flow up, but it always doesn't work that way. Sometimes it goes down if the business, isn't a soundly built business. And if it's got problems, it doesn't matter how good an operator the buyer is, they're going to have a diminution of value.
Yeah, like I said, one of the things that it's just been, because I've now coached hundreds of companies over the years, and the real folks who really succeed, like I said, tend to be really focused. They pick very tight geographies, very tight markets, and some of the ones are forced. They serve little towns that don't have a lot of suburbs, and they just have really good client density, because then good stuff starts to happen. People start to recognize your name. It's hard to say people will recognize your cleaning service name, but if you're in a town of 100,000 people and you've got 700 customers, you really do become a known entity. People start saying things like, "Oh, everyone uses this company." And that's what I've seen some of these really successful companies do, which is why it's not directly related to selling, but I always, when I do coach people, their natural tendencies, I need more revenue. I'm going to open my geography. And it's hard. Google doesn't want us to rank in every single city. The whole concept of domain authority, that you can have a certain domain authority, but the more places you try to rank, every time you try to rank somebody else, Google basically divides your authority. So if you've got a really authoritative website and you rank in 2 cities, that's great. But if you try to rank in 4 cities, suddenly you might find yourself not ranking in anything. And it's why the franchises aren't number one in every market. Because naturally, if we go out and look at the search engine optimization thing, it'll say, oh my gosh, the Maids has a domain authority of 60 and my domain authority is 30. They should be above me. But the problem is they're trying to rank in 100 different cities, so they don't rank in anything. So that's another reason why you want to focus, because it lets all of your marketing power, all of your Google search power, all of your signals to where you want to rank. It just reinforces that local.
And when you say focus,
mm-hmm.
that has several different dimensions. Geography is certainly
mm-hmm.
one of them, but knowing who your target customer is, what personas you're going after,
Yep.
are you, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I always talk about in my coaching. As you get bigger, you do less. When you're smaller and you need every dollar, you chase every lead, you do everything can. But to be scalable, you do less. You don't customize things as much. You decide who your ideal customer is. Instead of offering 5 tiers of service, you figure out how to bring it down to 2. You've got to make it operationally efficient. You've got to make the message easy. You don't chase every lead. You accept the idea that there's so much business out there that you just want the business that's ideal for you. Because you're big enough to get enough leads, you can start to do that. And like I said, it hurts you in a couple different ways. I see companies all the time, including me. Back in the day, I added commercial cleaning to my company because it seemed like an easy thing to go after. And it did get us $500,000 in revenue. But at the end of the day, I would have been better just sticking to house cleaning and just doubling down and sticking to that one thing. It would have helped me rank better. It would have been less of a distraction of my management team. And like I said, I probably could have gotten bigger than I would have ever imagined.
So, and I guess it depends where you are in terms of stages of growth. Mm-hmm. If you need those commercial cleaning jobs to make enough money to make payroll and keep a roof over your head, and the other option is, not making payroll, then do the commercial cleaning work. But what I'm hearing from that is, as you grow, narrow it down, narrow your focus.
Yeah, as you get bigger, you need to do less. It's actually kind of funny because Starbucks is learning this lesson right now. I don't know if you saw it, but Starbucks.
That was exactly what was on my mind. They're simplifying their menu.
Yeah, Starbucks just announced that they had a huge, I think it was like a 10% drop in revenue. It wasn't a small revenue miss. They had a substantial decline. And one of their relatively quick realizations, if we've made it too complicated. We're trying to do too much. We're trying to customize for everybody. We can't get the customers in and out fast enough. Everything's getting too expensive because we carry all these things, some of which are spoiling. So Starbucks literally said, we're going to go back to being Starbucks. We're going to be a coffee company. You're not going to come in and buy and get a pink drink, which is a, coconut milk with strawberry and mango in it. It's not what we should be doing. So that's what they've decided is we've messed up. We tried to do too much to too many people, and we don't do anything anymore. And yeah, you can lose your way. And in our industry, the most common thing is most people start out and they'll take on Airbnbs because they're easy to get, horrible to service, easy to get. But you can pick up $200,000 in Airbnb revenue in almost any market immediately. But you find out it burns you out, it burns your people out. The profit margins aren't as good, but man, it's a really quick and easy way to get into the business. But after you've been in the business a couple of years and you start figuring out who your good customer is and who your bad customer is, most people start to drop those. Now, there are people that go the other direction. We know somebody who has a $10 million business that largely just services Airbnbs, where they've just gone deep on it and said, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And we're going to do it efficiently. And they've ignored everything else. But most of us go, man, it is a lot easier to clean Mrs. Smith every other week than it is this Airbnb. So I'm going to drop that line of business.
But even with that much revenue in Airbnbs, their path forward, they're focusing on cleaning Mrs. Jones's house every other week. They think that's more scalable.
Yep. Yeah, no, they've caught on that the margins aren't great, that when you look at all the management and time that they need to do, even though they've got this huge business that looks great, they're like, you know what? We really want to start concentrating on the front end. And part of it is they've decided they want to control their own destiny. When you're servicing big property management groups, they can drop you on a dime. And then one of the nice things about Mrs. Smith and having 800, 2,000 of them is no one customer controls your destiny.
So, another dimension of this focus is focusing on being profitable. And you mentioned, a half a dozen years ago, it was harder to find $1 million companies. We run these numbers every time we do a May Central Academy Live, and 42% of the companies that use Made Central do over $1 million a year. And, that's great, but, how profitable are you? That we've found that in a lot of cases, companies, if they're more focused on the right customers and they're focusing on pricing, they're focusing on, their payroll to revenue, they can actually be more profitable, get their churn rate down, cleaning fewer homes. It's not about
Yep.
how many homes you clean. It's not about how much top line revenue. It's about being profitable. It's kind of a virtuous circle
Yeah, no,
too.
you and I were just talking about, $1 million in revenue, probably $1 million in profit, probably means you're doing 5 million in revenue. I know companies, I know you do too, that are making 25 and 28% profit. So no, those companies, if they hit 3.5 million, are going to have that $1 million run rate, at which point they can potentially sell to a VC. And not to mention, it's a lot nicer for the owner.
Or flip side, they can make themselves a buyer and start rolling up other companies. I
Yep.
mean, some of these VCs are looking for, and you could speak to this, platform companies, right?
Yep.
What,
Yeah, a
what,
platform company is a company they buy, which will then be the model that everyone else will be merged into. So they're looking, and that's one of the reasons why I sold back in the day, because the people who bought me were buying my company as a platform company and gave me a really nice multiple. But a platform company, is the company they say, this is the model that we want. We're going to buy other companies, but we're going to merge it into this company's operating system. So
right.
this is how we do things. This is the brand name we're going to run in, and then we're going to bulk it up. So they're really, most of them are looking to start with one really good acquisition. They're looking for one model that they can build off of. And if you can be that one, you can get sometimes even more than 10 times cash flow, because you're not just cash flow to them, you're a system, you're a process, you're something they can scale off of.
So I think in a lot of cases, the typical thought is I sell my business, they give me money, and then I walk away and find another job or do something else. But in some of these cases, especially if you're the platform company, isn't or couldn't equity be part of the deal? And the
Yep.
idea is you're going to be part of the management team of helping us build this bigger company.
Yeah, sometimes what they want is you. They want you. They're going to back you with the money. One of the deals I did recently, the owner retained 10% equity. So they sold it a really nice chunk of change, but the owner keeps 10%. They're going to keep a salary while they work there. So they're now making, 6-figure salary in addition. But their goal is to eventually build that big company that sells for 20 times cash flow. And it'll actually make the 90% they sold today look like a deal, like it was no big deal. So they're hoping to get an even bigger payday down the stream. So yeah, definitely possible. I'm just trying to cover all bases, because not everyone's going to be that big, that sophisticated, but there's those opportunities that don't exist before.
Right.
And then there's an opportunity the next tier down to be an attractive acquisition target, which is also nice. Used to be you had to sell to a broker and they would charge you a $5,000 listing fee plus 10% of the sale price. You don't need to do that anymore. At least not if you're one of these attractive companies. Call me and I'll hook you up with one of them. I do it for pretty cheap. I do a flat rate of like $5,000. But if it's for some of these other companies, I'll be honest, they give me a kickback of 2% of the sale price. So I don't even need to charge anything. If I can make the marriage happen, I get paid by them for finding you. So yeah, you don't even need to pay a broker anymore if you're the right size company, which if you're selling for $1 million, $2 million, that's a lot of money.
It is. It is. So if I'm a smaller company and I sell my business for a multiple of 3, But
Mhm.
I run my own house cleaning business for, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. I know the industry. Are there career opportunities for me out there for these like private equity firms and they're buying these things? I need somebody to manage it. I'm just, and I don't know if this is happening now or not, but I could see a day coming where
Mhm.
somebody's going to want to hire me. Maybe I don't want to own my company anymore, but I can make as much, if not more money working for somebody else and helping them build, their large company.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are looking for regional managers and things like that. They'll be looking. So normally they don't want to just buy one company. They want to buy two or three companies at close enough geography that somebody can run it. So yeah, out of every 2 to 3 acquisitions, they're probably looking for some type of manager, which will often come with benefits, which will often come with a pretty good package, and once again, often some type of participation if it eventually sells down the road. Um, we just sold one in DC that I think you know about, Tom, and the owner is staying on. She's going to draw a salary and she's somewhat of retirement age, but her opinion is she's going to stay until it's not fun anymore. She just got enough money that she's okay with retirement. She could retire at any time. So she's like, I'm going to keep doing this till I'm not enjoying it anymore. And if I keep enjoying it, I'll keep doing it. If not, cool. I got my money.
So it's not as cut and dry as I'm going to just continue to run my business or I'm going to sell my business. There's a lot of variations of
Yep.
a lot of different outcomes.
Well, and I we're going to keep seeing this acquisition stuff going on. Like I said, it's just starting. We're just now starting to see.
All these other verticals that we've talked about are ahead of us. So
Yeah.
we know it's going to happen.
Yep. Well, and what happens is these guys are copycats. All these guys VC firms do is copy each other. So if one of these guys starts to have success and their investors are making a 15% return on investment, the people over at the other firm are going to be copy what he's doing, figure out what he's doing, and do the same thing. I don't know if you know this, but a fair amount of the way that Bernie Madoff got caught back in the day is because competitive firms hired some of the smartest people in the world and said, copy what he's doing. And they came back and said, it's impossible. That cannot be done. And
Mm.
those people who were hired to copy Bernie are the ones who ran to the SEC and said, it's impossible. It can't be done. But that he got caught because people started trying to copy him. And that's what'll happen is one of these firms is going to start to have some success. And then a couple of the other firms are going to hire some of their bright kids and say, hey, go find more like this. And I think you'll see the multiples that people are willing to pay go up as well. Right now, the $1 million companies are still only selling for 3.5. But if we get a little bit of a feeding frenzy, I think we'll start seeing 4 or 5. Because even if I buy a company at 5 times cash flow, that's still a 20% return on investment. We talk about 5 times cash flow is like a huge amount of money because we're used to selling for 3, but there's not many things you can buy with money that'll get you that type of return on investment. So
So I guess there's a couple of other considerations. The value of your business is a function of cash flow and some intangible things times a multiple. Doesn't that multiple over time kind of go up and down based upon just overall macroeconomic conditions and amount of, money supply and
yeah, I mean, the biggest thing at the end of the day is just like everything else, it's supply and demand. Where do I get the best return on my investment in return for the risk? And that's why they're starting to look at our industry because they're seeing us as low risk. You know, I'll tell you right now, the people who loan money out for houses, if they can make an 8% return on investment, they think that's fantastic. So I know the real estate investing industry really well. And the guys there will loan you money till the end of time for an 8% return on investment. And it's because it's seen as very safe. Worst case scenario, you don't pay them back, they take your house away. So that's kind of the floor. So people are looking for a better return than that, which is why I said 20% is pretty good, especially if you can prove your company's stable and has a nice, predictable cash flow. And that's why these HVAC companies have been selling so quickly because they never have down years. They're looking at it and go, man, it doesn't matter what's happening in the economy. If your furnace goes out, you get it fixed. And so they've decided that's an industry they want to own. And home cleaning is becoming kind of the same category. Recessions happen, but it doesn't hit us that hard.
so another area that I've seen you help a lot of businesses with is managing tax liability.
Mhm.
And so you sell your business for $5 million. That's a lot of money, but you're
Yep.
not going to put $5 million in the bank. You've got capital gains taxes and things like that, and those rules are kind of in flux now, and it's kind of
Yep.
unclear what that's going to look like in the future. Could you
Yeah, I mean,
speak to that?
the good news is you're going to pay capital gains instead of income tax, which is normally 15 or 20%. And like you said, they might tweak that and it might go back down to 15%. So it is a chunk, but it's not.
Or it could go back up in a
It
meaningful
could go
way.
back
Yeah.
up depending what happens, right? Right now it's 15 and 20. It could potentially go back up. There are some things you can do if you're looking at the long-term game plan. If you're really not going to be involved in the day-to-day, you could potentially set it up where this is actually owned by a non-taxable account. As you know, I've had my IRA that's owned both real estate and home cleaning companies in the past, in which case when it sells, it owes no taxes because it goes into your IRA. So those are some things that people out there could potentially look at as well. There's all kinds of really cool things you can do to try to offset those.
I know some people who have not necessarily in the house cleaning business, but just other businesses in general. There's a ton of money. There's a lot of buying and selling in businesses now, and they're trying to get out while they believe the tax scene is more favorable now than what it will be in the future.
I mean, probably regardless of which party you support, one thing that I think is safe to say is both of the current proposals on the table from both sides are going to absolutely blow up the budget deficit. We are going, as a country, going to owe more money if either of the two presidential candidates do what they say they're going to. Now, depending which economist you talk to, one is worse than the other, but both sides, everyone pretty much agrees it's going to get a lot worse if they do what they say they're going to do. And you just can't do that forever. Eventually, someone's got to pay the piper, which means taxes have to go up.
Yeah, there's a debt of $34 trillion and a deficit of $2 billion. That deficit's going to get bigger.
Well, and some of the stuff that sounds really good, now we're waging into politics on some of this, but like student loan forgiveness is talked about a lot. But what people don't talk about, and I forget the exact number, I should probably Google it, but something like 60% of the assets owned by the US federal government is student loan debt. So this whole let's forgive student loan debt thing, everyone acts like it's magic and it doesn't have a cost, but it's literally over half of the value of the US government is student loan debt. It would eliminate a huge portion of the assets of real estate, military equipment. I'm actually Googling it so I know what I'm talking about.
Kevin's adding here, it seems that part of the magic in scaling is to accomplish revenue growth through target marketing that creates efficiency, controls attrition, properly grow net operating profit. Nothing can be focused in a silo. Those are all contributing factors toward, creating value in a business that an investor would appreciate.
Yep, having it be super profit. And I looked, 40% of what the U.S. government owns is student loan debt. So all the buildings, all the military ships, 40% of the value of our U.S. dollar is student loan debt. So it's a big deal. And so that type of stuff, once again, I don't want to get into the politics of good or bad. Should we do it or should we not do it? But when it's going to be a big hit and somebody's got to pay for it eventually, which means taxes are going to go up. And that's the Democrat side. On Trump's side, you're hearing no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. All of those things will blow up the deficit as well. So, I can tell you if they go no tax on tips, I'm going to get real creative on ways to maximize my tips for my employees. So,
the Treasury is having a hard time selling T-bills, and they are issuing more and more debt, and the interest they're having to offer on that, they're discounting it in order to encourage more people to buy it, and they're not having. That's getting harder and harder. The Fed's trying to lower interest rates, but if you look at what's happening in the Treasury markets, interest rates are going up anyway, just supply and demand, and there's a lot more debt than there are people who want to buy it.
So yeah, the really is if you're looking to sell in the next couple of years, it might be the time now, just because there's a good chance the taxes could be going the wrong way. But I still think the bigger opportunity is on bulking your company up, making it more efficient. And the big question to most people, if you came to me right now and said you wanted to sell, I'm going to ask what you're going to do after you sell,
Yeah.
because 3 or 4 times cash flow sounds really good, but it might not take you as far as you think it's going to. So I end up talking about 2/3 of the people who come to me out of selling, because I ask them what their number is. What's the number that you could retire? And am I going to be able to get you there? So normally it's good for people who are retiring, and some people have magic numbers. An awful lot of people I'm working with, their goal is to sell to pay off the house. If they can pay off the house, they're happy.
So, yeah, I think that I agree with, whoops. We just lost Derek for a second. I'm sure he'll be back. I think Derek would tell you that now might not be the time that we would want to sell, but regardless of where you are with that process, we should all be preparing our business so it is sellable with or without a buyer, or even if you aren't interested in selling. Hey, Derek.
Yeah, sorry, my internet glitched for a sec.
What I was sharing is that one of the things that I'm sure that you would encourage people to do, regardless of where they are in their mindset of, do I want to sell my business or not, we all should be preparing our business like we're getting ready to sell it. Hey, we're making our business better. It's going to be more sustainable. We're performing at a higher level. Plus, do you remember what the statistic is, that some meaningful percentages of businesses are sold under unplanned situations, or sold under duress?
Yeah. No, I mean, what happens if you die tomorrow? Could your family sell it? Would they want to, would it be able to run without you? What's the circumstances? And, over $1 million in revenue, I think that's when you need to start looking at removing yourself from the day to day. You've got enough cash flow. And I got to tell you, your life just gets a lot better when you are not the person who has to deal with the upset customers, when you're not the one who has to deal with the day-to-day drama. It's just much better for your lifestyle. One of the things when I coach people is, one of the first things I start pushing people to do is go to the office at 10. Don't walk in the building till 10 a.m. because everything that seems to happen in our business happens in the first couple of hours. They'll have to learn how to handle it without you. You'll be able to come in and work on the strategic stuff.
I know your brother's been doing that for years.
Sean's been doing that for a long time. Yeah, my brother's the ultimate lifestyle company. I talk about this in my coaching business all the time, that he hit $1 million in revenue. Gosh, it had to be like 12 years ago now. And at that point, he's like, I'm good. My goal is now to work as little as I need to maintain my $200,000 a year. And he went on a reality show and went into the woods for 28 days without any contact to mankind. Business ran just fine. Sometimes he yells at me and goes, I think I've got I'm smarter than you. You may be trying to build this, massive enterprise over there, but I work about 4 hours a week and I'm still in the top 10% of income earners. So, yeah.
And he's got a sellable business. He could sell it whenever.
Oh, he has a very sellable business. Yeah, he could sell it tomorrow.
So I think the number's 40% was a statistic I remember from Biz Buy Sell, that 40% of the business they're selling is because of somebody, became chronically ill or died, or there's
death, divorce, chronic illness, sudden need for relocation. So all that type of stuff tends to happen.
And if you're not prepared for it,
I can't get you the good multiples if you don't have the right systems and processes in place, because you're not selling a business, you're selling a job.
Yeah. And you're going to make more money, and you're going to enjoy life. I mean, there's a lot of benefits of preparing your business to sell, even if you don't sell, is the real takeaway to this.
Yep. Yeah, no, I just recently, almost for kicks, got on the phones to help the office the other day. And because it's been a while since I did it, and I hung after a day, I'm like, man, that's tiring. I'm glad I don't do that every day. It was kind of a fun experience, but I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not the most fun thing in the world to do, especially when they know you're the owner. They beat you up a little bit more.
Yeah, you're the decision maker.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, I need to talk to the manager.
So yeah, definitely try to get out of the day-to-day. Definitely work on your cash flow. Make sure your systems are there, your processes are there, everything's documented well. And once again, try to get efficient. An efficient company is going to sell better than a company of the same size that's not as efficient.
So
they're looking
at what is efficient? What does that mean? What does efficient mean?
How much revenue are you getting per employee? when you imagine every single employee at the end of the day costs you a certain amount of money to onboard, a certain amount of effort to manage. So if I'm looking at two companies with the same revenue and one has 100 employees and one has 50, I'm picking the one with 50 all day long because it's so much easier to run. It's so much more efficient. It's so much more scalable.
How much revenue per technician can you generate in a day?
Yep. Yeah.
And
Get that number as high as you can, and how much per week. It's become quite the rage to have part-time employees right now, but that's a little difficult to scale.
And the term is return on human capital.
Yep.
And you look at other home services, pest control. A good pest control company can generate $1,000 a day per technician, but their pay is not materially different than what a cleaning technician would pay. So they get a much better return.
Well, yeah, because each employee comes with a certain amount of risk. Each person you bring into your company is a gamble. I mean, you can have the best screening process in the world, but they could get you in trouble. They could get you sued. They could charge you with pregnancy discrimination when you need to fire them. So every time you add an employee, you're upping the risk. And so an acquirer looks at stuff like that. How much revenue do you get out of your geography? Once again, what is your market share? I would rather buy a company with a 20% market share of a really small geography than a 5% market share of a bigger geography. So
a lot of this gets down to something more than just not selling a bunch of jobs and cleaning a bunch of homes and hiring a bunch of people, though. Professional management practices where, you're scheduling and you're maximizing the revenue per day by being more efficient, not driving around, managing your payroll to revenue. Pricing, we've done studies in Made Central that you might have an average bill rate per hour of, say, $70 an hour, but, a quarter of the jobs that you're doing are 40 or less.
Right.
And you don't know it because $70 an hour, you're happy with that. It doesn't really matter what the average is. Look at every individual home and adjust them, and your 70 goes up to 75 or 80. And you're just making, that money goes to the bottom line. You can double your profit a lot of times without having to clean more homes.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And like I said, that hidden cost of all those extra employees is a really big deal. And we don't always get it because we've kind of come to accept that we have to have all these employees. But trust me, the Wall Street investor types definitely get it because each employee is a risk. Each employee is a car on the road that could get in an accident. Each employee is that risk that you hired the 1 in 1,000 person whose cousins and attorney is going to sue you for nothing. So they want to do it as efficiently as they can.
And when you get that return on human capital, if you get that revenue per, technician up, you're able to create better jobs too, because you can pay more, you can provide benefits, your turnover rate goes down. I mean, it's a lot of good things. It's not just for the benefit of being more it's not just for the benefit of the business owner. It's the benefit.
Well, no, yeah. Like you said, if you pay more and you have less turnover, your customer loss rate goes down. Once again, turnover is a risk. Every time I hire somebody, I don't think of it as 50 people. If you're turning your people, if you have 200% turnover, you're actually running 150 people through your company in the year. And that's a lot of risk. If my retention of my employees is better and I've got 50 people on the street, but I keep 45 of them, I'm a much more stable, safer to invest in company. So those are all factors that come into play. And those are all things they look at. Like I said, all of these companies that I've help people sell recently, at least to the Wall Street types, they spend a lot of time looking at customer retention rates because they're not just looking at buying the cash flow. They're looking at buying the predictable cash flow, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And the predictable part of it is how long do you keep them? How good are you keeping them? Because that's also where the rubber hits the road. Do you really have a system that generates a predictable outcome, or are you just a flash in the pan? Are you somebody who's good at internet marketing, made the phone ring a bunch, but couldn't actually service anybody?
Because the other dimension of that is they're going to go in and they've got unlimited capital to operate that business. And they're going to be willing to spend more on advertising. Mm-hmm. Use AdWords for an example. They'll dominate, the AdWords market. And if they know the lifetime value of a customer, they can do the math, and it might take them a year and a half to get their money back off of what they spent to, market it and get that customer. They don't care because they don't need the money, right? And they're
Right.
still reaching their hurdle rate. And that's going to change the competitive forces in time for any of us running a house cleaning business.
Yeah, most of the so one of the interesting things you asked about your online reputation, they care about that because once again, it's proof that you know how to actually deliver the service. But most of them don't really care about your marketing ability because they all feel like they've got marketing down. They're like, I know how to pour fuel on your machine. My question is, how well does your machine run?
Right.
If your machine runs well, I've got the fuel. Let's just make sure you have a good lifetime and return on your customers. Let's make sure you have a good sales conversion rate, that your customers don't turn too quickly, that you're not spending too much money on warranty work. That's a thing. You mentioned people who have $70 bill rates, but when you actually go pull it, they make way less. And when you look at it, it's recleans are killing them. It doesn't take too many zeros averaged in to destroy your profitability. And that's the type of stuff that really starts to add up. And that's what I mean by the machines working well. Like there are people I know that don't run great services, but they have good online reputations because they buy off the bad reviews. Oh, you're so unhappy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll give you $1,000 off, double your original money. It stops them from getting an online review, but it kills their profitability. So that's why they're looking at all these details. How well does if your business is a machine, how efficient is your machine? And if it's efficient, I'll pour all the fuel on it in the world.
And they're going to be making investments in marketing that most of us couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
So another reason to be taking advantage of the window of opportunity we have now in terms of making our businesses better, making them more sellable, but in fact, you're making them more profitable and creating, more value for yourself. You're going to be competing against larger companies that are going to be doing things that aren't happening in your markets now or in the past.
Yeah. No, I would not want to be a company that lives off of just AdWords or LSAs in the future. That's not going to be a fun place to be.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about AI and how that's going to be changing, the whole game of search versus answer. But if you want to hear more about that, we're going to be in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks talking about some of this stuff, aren't we, Derek?
Yeah, we're doing the follow-up on our innovation summit.
Yeah, 10 years ago, if you can believe that, we took an entire day at the ISSA convention and did a disruptive innovation summit. We had Marco Zappacosta, the CEO of Thumbtack, spoke. We had somebody from the venture capital world. We had a lot of different speakers talking about the changes that were coming in the industry. And, I think we got a lot of things right. Some of the things I think maybe the timing was a little bit off, but the discussion needs to continue. We're going to be talking about that at convention this year.
Yeah, and like you said, we're going to cover it at convention, but I said it back then. I don't know if people heard me that, this first couple rounds might fail, but the one thing you'll need to know about VCs, they just keep coming. I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but there was a company that a whole bunch of people put a bunch of money in called Webvan that was supposed to redesign the grocery industry. And when it went bankrupt, everyone's like, see, no one wants to get groceries delivered to their house. Webvan may have failed, but man, we've all got Instacart now. So it
was funny because I went to the grocery store Sunday morning, and I don't go there a lot, but half the people running up and down the aisles were people that work for the grocery store picking orders that were going to be delivered by Instacart. There were more people filling orders for Instacart than it was actual shoppers.
Well, like I said, 10 years ago, everyone would have been real cocky. If Webvan failed, all of this internet stuff failed, the grocery industry will never go online. Guess what? Wall Street just keeps trying, and the VC firms will keep trying until they get it right.
Derek, we're at the top of the hour.
Yeah. Man. Happens fast, huh?
I appreciate sharing with us today. This was useful stuff, and there's a lot of opportunity, and things are going to be changing, and we all need to be working on our businesses with in the back of our mind saying, you know, what can we be doing to making our businesses more sellable? Even if we don't want to sell, it's going to be more valuable. We're going to be creating more value for all of our stakeholders.
Yeah, and like I said, even if you don't sell, it's a lot more fun to run if you can make it the type of business somebody would want to buy from you.
If anybody wants more information about any of this, Derek, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Easiest way is you can just shoot me an email. It's Coach Derek, Derek at DebbieSardone.com, or just reach out on Facebook. Any of those work.
And you'd be glad to have a discussion, right?
No, I do a 15-minute consult with people all the time. Like I said, I also coach people on their cleaning business. So sometimes the answer is you can't sell it like this. Let's fix it. Or I just help people figure out what it is. I just listed a business for somebody who I first talked to 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, I gave them a free consult. They told me what their number was. And I said, I can sell you for that, but only if you change these things. So they spent the last couple of years doing it. And now they're back and like, okay, we're ready. Can you get us the $1.2 million you talked about? And I was like, with the changes you made, yeah, we're ready now.
I've worked with Derek for a long time. We've been partners in businesses. We've written books. We've done a lot of things together. And I can tell you that if you're looking for help in your cleaning business, you have nothing to lose to talk to Derek for 15 minutes. He might give you some ideas to work on that you haven't thought about.
Yeah. Well, great.
Well, we're going to go ahead and call this a wrap. Derek, I appreciate you being with us today. If I don't talk to you before, I'll see you in a couple of weeks in Las Vegas.
Okay. Thanks.
We'll be back next Wednesday, 5 o'clock Eastern. Take care, everybody.